None, we'll move on. First up is an update on completed policing mandates and police department self-initiated criminal justice projects. Chief Weitzel.
Thank you. Good evening, President Sells, trustees, Manager Francis. So I wanted to come back and report to the board, our elected officials, the manager, and the community, what's happened since our August 2020 community conversation that we had. Because at that meeting, those of you that were there or those that remember, at the very end of the meeting, I told those in attendance that some of the information we gave out and we talked about that we had not completed yet, that I would report back to the president, the board, and the residents. So this is my opportunity to do that because it's taken some time for us to reach some of these mandates. Some of it is due to COVID and some of it's due just to lengthy paperwork. So as you remember, the community meeting was held in August. There were individuals that either sent us emails with questions. Some showed up that night with 3x5 cards and submitted them. And there were those residents that went to the podium and spoke. And some of the issues I said I would follow up on was the 10 shared principles. I had mentioned that over 6 months ago. We have now fully adopted that. What that is the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police and the NAACP developed a 10 shares principles. It's voluntary for police agencies to sign and to train and mentor their employees. We've done that. Every single one of my sworn and civilian employees have signed that document, have been trained in it, have sworn to those items listed. And I have purchased large posters for my facility and have them in the process of being framed and put in the roll call room when we can go back in the roll call room and in the locker room so that the officers see those 10 principles every day. I will tell you there's over 180 police agencies in Illinois that have signed that document. And on first glance, it might look pretty simplistic to you. It might be like, every police officer should have these principles. And I would say you're right. This is just a way for us to reaffirm that these are the principles we've had. We've discussed them with our officers, and we let our residents know that these are principles that guide us in our policing. So those have been fully adopted. And then we went on to the federal requirements. So there was a federal presidential mandate put out that said you had to become federally certified for your use of force policy and other policies if you wanted to continue to receive federal grant funding. So any agency that decided to opt out of that, the federal government can cut 40% of your grant funding. So needless to say, most agencies have done that. That was a project that was handled by my deputy chief, Bill Gutchick. It took him probably about 4 months to get the proofs in. So what we had to do is we had to prove our policies, our procedures. We had to prove that we taught them. We had to prove that officers signed off on them. We had to submit information to our insurance carrier. They had to certify certain documents. There was a lot of back and forth that went on. So we were certified in late December, and we were one of the first 20 agencies in Illinois to be certified. That letter's in your packet. How that works is the federal government picks an agency in every state. It is the governing board, and then that governing board will report that back to the federal government. In Illinois, the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police is the governing agency. And all those documents are kept at the Illinois Chiefs main office, and every 3 years, we will recertify. That was a project exclusively handled by Deputy Chief Gutchick. He did a great job. I also wanted to let you know that under Deputy Chief Gutchick's supervision, we were certified by Lexipol, which is our general order policy development documents, that we are gold standard. Now that's through our insurance carrier. So initially we got a grant funded by IRMA, gave us a grant back many years ago to go with this Lexipol development policy and procedures. They gave us a 50% matching grant, and we're 99% in compliance. And really the 1% in compliance is because I had officers that were off this year, either on medical leave or injured on duty. As soon as they are back to duty, we will submit again, and we will be 100%. But we're in the top 3% of the Lexipol agencies with the gold standard. That project was also handled by Deputy Chief Gutchick. And then I want you I talked about some juvenile matters at our public meeting. So we entered another agreement on juvenile handling of juvenile cases. That's something that's been in front of this board before, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because there's one significant improvement. I dealt with the director and I asked if we could get a response from youth outreach to the village. So they have now said that they will make it come to our facility if need be and accompany our officers to homes or apartments in Riverside on follow-ups within 24 hours. That was not in our previous agreement. So I really pushed for that. And I would have liked it more than 24 hours, but because of the organization that there are, that's what they can do for us. But it does allow us significant follow-up with our residents and families that would need the youth outreach services that they can accompany an officer, which has never been done before. So that was in effect as of late October, early November. So moving on from that, the mental health update. There was a lot of talk at our presentation about mental health issues. I want you to know where we stand in that. We've had a lot of discussions with the township. I just did a Zoom meeting last night with the Township Mental Health Board. They are going to fund, give us some funding for different training. They're also going to fund what are called street cards. So the township has agreed to print up these professional cards that the officers can carry in their squad car that are resource cards. So in the middle of the night, whenever if we run into a situation on a mental health issue that's not violent, that maybe a family's looking for a referral or maybe somebody's looking for a referral, we're going to have that available. They're printing up 300 of them and they're going to be distributing them to Riverside. And I've also asked them to distribute them to Brookfield and North Riverside, our partners, and they've agreed to do that. That's going to be funded by the township. In that same vein, I'm also still working on legislation in Springfield. State Representative Mike Zaleski has been very supportive of that. Unfortunately, it didn't move. So those of you that have been following that recent legislation in Springfield, I'm still working my way through that 764-page document. But the legislation that was under police reform, we initially had mental health funding in there. It did not make it into that final document. But I've been assured that it's going to be continue to be pushed for what are called health response teams. And we're going to start those off regionally. And it's just too expensive to have every individual department have their own mental health professional. But the model we're going to follow is regional. So that is still on the forefront. It's still being pushed by Representative Zaleski. And the Illinois Chiefs have signed on to that. The Illinois Sheriff's Association have signed on. And so have many mental health professionals. In our area, Pillars organization is in support of that. And they spoke about that last night in front of the Township Mental Health Board. On my couple of the other projects, I wanted to make sure I mentioned the pandemic in the prairies. I did that with the two sheriffs, one from Nebraska and one from New York State. I was asked to participate in that for one reason only. They found out about our MOU with our Consolidated Dispatch Center for during the pandemic for sharing services. That's what brought my name, because I was the only non-sheriff that participated in that webinar. And since that webinar took place, I've had 32 requests for our MOU. All of those 32 requests have come from sheriff agencies. In addition to that, I had 12 other agencies in Illinois that asked for that. So I just wanted to make a mention that I thank the president and the board and the manager for supporting that. And I want to thank our village attorney, Michael Mars, because this board allowed him to work on that document. This board allowed us to spend dollars to get that document printed. And that document is being widely used by other agencies and it's being modeled. So I wanted to thank both the board and Michael for that, because I think it's something that we can share with other agencies moving forward. And it's a fantastic document. My final two things is I recently did a partnership in policing through the LaGrange Women Voters Association. I probably got the name wrong, but I was asked to participate in this partnership in policing only because of our program in August. So I got a call from their organization and said that they saw our presentation that went on in the auditorium. And they asked me to participate specifically because of the program we put on to our residents. I was on there, and so was Chief Brian King from Hinsdale. And then there were many other social service providers that were on there, including Beds Plus and Pillars. So we were able to talk about issues surrounding police diversity, collaboration, equity, recruiting, retention. It was attended by over 100 people on Zoom. Well, that's the maximum they could take in. And since then, I've continued to get emails from residents to ask them questions. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because I know President Sells was really the one pushing our community meeting. And I wanted you to know the only reason they reached out to me is because they viewed that and they saw it. They thought it was a good program and they wanted me to join that specifically because of that reason. So those are the initiatives. I wanted to make sure I reported back because when I left that meeting, I told residents that attended that I would report back. And so I want to make sure that the board, the president, the manager, our residents know that I just wasn't giving rhetoric. It's taken since August to do this, but we've achieved this. And it certainly was not myself. I want the board to know that my deputy chief and my operations lieutenant were involved in every step of the way. And so was my administrative assistant, Pamela McCall. So this was not only Tom Weitzel's initiative. It was board directives and our residents' directives, what they wanted to see, and the command staff has delivered that to our officers and to the residents. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer. If not, I just wanted to update the board.
Any questions for Chief Weitzel? Mr. Hanna?
Yeah, President Sells, I just want to say how impressed I am by that summary. That meeting, that President Sells put together, Chief, that you participated in, I think was well received. And just to, have that type of follow-up and hear, especially the mental health cards, I think that's a giant step in addressing some of the concerns that were raised. I know you had concerns at that summer meeting that your resources for that were limited. And I'm just impressed that you took those affirmative steps, you and your department, to address those potential issues and found a solution or some type of solution for them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think as usual, Chief Weitzel is being modest in his comments. When the meeting we had in August, if you all think back and remember the tenor of the time at that point last year, it was a really wonderful thing to see how readily Chief Weitzel embraced the opportunity to meet with our residents at a time when things were very difficult. And I really appreciated that he and his command staff, they did not participate reluctantly. They welcomed the opportunity to meet with our residents, and that kind of conversation has blossomed into the things that Chief Weitzel has just mentioned. Shows the importance of talking to one another and having that ongoing conversation between our police force and our community. I think the youth outreach that Chief Weitzel just mentioned is extraordinary, and I agree with Mr. Hanna, as is the mental health component. It's really important that we find ways to take those kind of pressures off of our sworn police officers, so that they can spend their time doing what their primary duty is, which is keeping us all safe. So Chief Weitzel, you continue to make us all proud. And I really appreciate what you do for our village.
Thank you. I would like to know if I could make a closing comment about
Please.
Something Manager Francis said earlier about positions we hold.
Please.
So she's being kind. I think the president and board should know. When President Sells said when she rattled off all the positions I hold, and you said you found it how I could be a police chief, I want you to know she allows me to do it. And I think the other department heads would tell you the same thing. And Jessica gave herself like 2 things. I can tell you she's involved in more than that. She's just being modest on her own. But I wanted to publicly thank her, and she read those because I couldn't do those positions and bring that knowledge back to this village and this board without the village manager allowing me to be involved in those organizations. So I thought, President and Board of Trustees, I thought you should know that.
We are blessed with a very talented and dedicated team. I appreciate it every day.
Thank you.